To explain what the truth is and how it works, I will have to show you a little trick. Let's set a timer for 2 minutes. Now, using hard facts and a pinch of statistics, we will prove completely bullshit. Namely, that Nazi Germany was a society of total peace, humanity and empathy. This is Yad Vashem, the National Memorial Complex of Holocaust history. It is the second most visited tourist site in Israel and the most authoritative organization in the world dealing with the historical heritage of the Jews. Yad Vashem maintains a list of the righteous. These are non-Jews who, under the threat of their own death, saved Jews during the Holocaust. And here is the astonishing detail. Yad Vashem documented 651 righteous who were ethnic Germans. During the Holocaust, approximately 70 million people lived in Nazi Germany. Remember these numbers: 70 million Germans, and among them 651 righteous. In February 2021, the sociological company Ipsos conducted a survey of 508 US citizens. They were asked what they think about the Biden administration's initial step in combating the COVID. But that's not what's important. What is important is that according to Ipsos data, the sampling error was 4.8% and the accuracy of the conclusions is 95%. Simply put, they claim that 508 people represent an adequate cross-section of the entire US population, with 95% accuracy. By the way, in 2021, the population of America was 330 million people. Now let's marry these two stories. From a sample of 508 people, one can draw conclusions about a country with a population of 330 million. Therefore, one can also draw a conclusion about a country in which 70 million people live, based on the 651 righteous. And if that's the case, then Nazi Germany was a country in which humanity and empathy won. Conclusion accuracy 95%. What collective guilt are philosophers talking about? And what are Germans even guilty of if only 24 Nazi leaders were tried at the Nuremberg tribunal and 3 of them were acquitted? 651 righteous people and 21 criminals. Who is there more of? Objective truth. You think it's not even worth trying, right? Keep calm. This time everything will be different, simple and clear, I promise. This is a chair. It is hard to dispute this truth without falling into outright idiocy, isn't it? Descartes said, "The word truth is the strict sense denotes the conformity of thought with its object." Well, here the chair is the only object. There is nothing to argue about. Truth. These are also chairs. This is also truth and it is obvious. But how exactly did we get there? We came to this conclusion because these objects have common characteristics. They both have 4 legs, a seat and a backrest. Only one detail differs. The object on the left has no armrests, while the object on the right does. It turns out that the conclusion that these are chairs is something like the arithmetic mean. We intuitively compare characteristics, and if most of them match, we use the same word to talk about different objects. Thus, the expressions "these are chairs" become true, and no one is going to argue with this either. These are 5 objects here. All of them are different. What will be the truth in this case? Let me guess. Chairs, right? They all have a seat, but damn, only 2 out of 5 have armrests, 4 out of 5 have backs, and the number of legs can be 3, 4 or 5. On average, these are chairs with 4 legs. Descartes calls for Aristotle's help. They both thoughtfully chew their lips and look at the sky. Because if we take the far left item or the far right item, we will see that the legs are not 4 at all. That's it. At this stage, it's quite possible to start a debate on the topic what is a true chair. Armchair, chair with 4 legs, chair with a backrest, or only what has a seat. But a seat also can be found on a throne, a nightstand, a stamp, a desk. To cut long story short, any truth is generalization. When we take several elements of reality and find something average among them. Let's call it logical mean. And this thought is best reflected by the bell curve. Simple, clear, comprehensive. This example clearly shows that the more elements in the sample, the more specific items will not correspond to the truth. And it is also shows here that objective truth becomes so when many people agree on the formulation of the generalization. These are chairs. Who would argue with that? You might say, the example with the chairs is a bad example. Here the logical mean really works. But if we start discussing truth in relation to the laws of nature, one might end up banging their head against the bell curve. Well, let's check it out. In the 20th century, there was a physicist named Erwin Schrödinger. He was one of the fathers of quantum mechanics, but you probably know him thanks to the paradox of Schrödinger's cat, which is simultaneously alive and dead. Almost poetry. In his book, What is Life?, Schrödinger provides a splendid example. If we take a closed glass aquarium and fill it with fog, the fog will start to settle down at a constant speed. But if we study the behavior of an individual droplet of this fog under a microscope, we will see that it makes complex movements, and as Schrödinger says, on average, is subject to the force of gravity. Physicists know well that physical laws are based on atomic statistics and are approximate. The same applies to any truth in any science. Look, biology. Darwin studied many species of animals, plants, fungi, and made a general conclusion about them, which is called the theory of evolution. Isn't it the logical mean that describes the truth unfolding over time? Medicine. The results of medical research are always a reflection of the average, because people's bodies are different. Microeconomics. It is harder to say which microeconomic categories are not a reflection of the average. Markets for goods, labor, money, currencies, securities, GDP, GNP, indices, aggregate values, all these are concepts that are true only on average. Meteorology. Tomorrow it will be 19 degrees Celsius here with light rain. And this forecast is the average that resulted from analyzing wind speed, humidity, solar activity, atmospheric pressure, cloudiness, and who knows what else. Artificial intelligence. Well, you know perfectly how it works. You give some new app 15 of your photos and it gives you this. You pour your heart out of ChatGPT and it answers you with the logical mean of all the texts uploaded to it before. Shaping public opinion. A child who has encountered different opinions on the effectiveness of horoscopes 1000 times will adhere to the logical mean opinion when they grow up, and will call it his own. The same applies to his opinion on the harm of smoking, the duration of sexual acts, belief in God, ethical norms, and so on. A normal person is the average of all the influences they have received throughout their life. Examples can be given until the video becomes 10 hours long. Sociology, computer science, legal debates, history, conflict studies, and even mathematics. Any truth is the logical mean of the elements we analyze. By the way, try to provide an example in the comments of a truth that is not on average. Something tells me that there will be no comments under the video. Anyway, here is the trick we all gathered here for. The main reason why all of us have problems with objective truth is this. Different people find different averages in the same set of elements. Even in our elementary example with 5 chairs, this is clearly visible. I believe that truth sounds like this. Chairs should have a backrest and 4 legs. But you might disagree with me and say that, in fact, truth is when chairs have no armrests. The set of elements is the same, but the conclusions are different. Let's hope it doesn't come to blows. The second problem with objective truth is even worse. As soon as we add a new element to the discussion, it changes our average. This is easy to understand using the example of a trial. So far we only have the testimony of a witness. The truth is that the defendant is guilty. DNA test results appears not guilty. Correspondence is made public in which the defendant confesses how he deceived the DNA test, guilty again. The correspondence is proven to be fabricated, not guilty again. One fact can change everything, because it changes the scale of the discussion. So any discussion on this planet, any political or domestic argument, is an endless manipulation of the scale of the discussion using so-called arguments. In reality, what we call arguments are new elements in the bell curve aimed at changing the mean, shifting the truth. You have surely come across this debate, but you definitely haven't analyzed it in this way.
If you are going to dictate to me that I'm supposed to pretend that men are women and women are men, no.
Let this be the starting point of the discussion.
You're still saying these kids should not be accepted because they don't really fit in either place? They can't just
The girl adds a new element to the discussion: children. This is no longer a debate about gender, it is a debate about a specific situation. Obviously, there will be a different logical mean here.
I'm saying that the Boy Scouts have a standard. You must be a biological boy to be a Boy Scout. You have to be a boy to be a Boy Scout.
Ben accepts the game and adds another element, the Boy Scouts rules. This shifts the logical mean again.
Scout.
that written though?
In the name Boy Scouts.
Do you understand? Essentially, the girl was trying to say that there are no carved-in-stone standards, meaning the element of Boy Scout standards should be removed from the discussion. But Shapiro found a convincing way to show that this element cannot be removed. It is fixed in the name of the organization.
Okay, let me ask you this. I won't ask you how old. I will ask you how old you are, okay? Because you're young enough that it's probably not insulting to ask you. So.
I'm 22, so I'm probably young and naive, right?
No. Why aren't you 60? Why aren't you 60? Why can't you identify as 60? What is the problem with you identifying as 60?
And this is called an analogy. And it allows you to add absolutely any element from any sphere into the discussion. In this case, Ben added age, but 2 sentences before that he tried to pull the same trick with a moose. It didn't work. Here's the thing. If you limit the number of elements discussed in a debate, the debate turns into solving a problem. That's why any professional debater first tries to define the terms.
What is a woman?
That's a stupid question, dude. That's a dumb question.
What is a woman?
When terms are clearly defined, it prevents the addition of new elements to the discussion that are not related to the topic.
The problem with this entire line of questioning that she's pursuing here is that she refuses to define her terms.
In general, if there is no clearly defined set of elements to be discussed in a debate, any participant can freely throw in new facts, memories, personal experiences, expert opinions, statistics, documents, metaphors, and analogies. In such a case, the argument turns into an amorphic fluid mass in which it is impossible to establish a logical mean. This is how absolutely any discussion is structured. For example, the essence of the conflict about the shape of the Earth is that scientists use telescopes, complex mathematical models, and images from space to establish the truth. And flat Earth theory enthusiasts use observations of a yacht sail and level taken on a plane. They have completely different scales of discussion, and therefore different truth. Even Google regularly tries to pull this trick on us. So what we are used to calling a debate is either creativity if it has no purpose, or propaganda if it does have a purpose. And when we change the scale of the discussion, we inevitably change the truth. The video is not about this, but I will hint at something else very important. The language of science is mathematics, precisely because all terms are clearly defined in mathematics. 2 in any arithmetic operations, it is always 2. But in the humanities, try agreeing on what aggression or consciousness even means. Alright, I will tell you quickly. There are only 2 steps. First, if you backed against the wall, set in new elements. Provide examples, tell life stories, compare your opponent's arguments to Akkadian script. The more emotional the new facts are, the higher the chance the discussion will take a new course. Secondly, fiercely resist every time your opponent tries to do the same thing. For example, add a fact referred to a quote or personal experience. Just respond to them. It's not the same. Not the same. Let's get back to the essence of the discussion. And of course, demand the definition of terms. That's all. If you consistently adhere to these rules, it will definitely be impossible to out-argue you. And remember the main thing. Debate does not seek truth. Debate seeks a set of elements that will make the opponent agree with your opinion. By this point, you already understood what I did at the beginning of the video, right? I compared red with hot. The sociological company Ipsos used Knowledge Panel in its research, the largest probability-based online panel in the USA, which includes about 60,000 participants, including those from under-researched and hard-to-reach social groups. Out of these 60,000, they selected 508 people. The peculiarity of their sample of respondents is that this sample is random and socially representative. It is based on different age, economic and territorial administrative segments of the country's population. However, 651 righteous among the nations from Nazi Germany is a completely non-random sample. It is deliberately biased, as it does not take into account age, representation of residents from different regions of Germany or anything else. It focuses on the criterion that is key for us, the behavior of the studied group. And this is a magnificent example of how by selecting the right groups of respondents at the tails of the bell curve, you can literally prove anything. Especially since there were far more than 651 righteous among the nations in Nazi Germany who specifically saved Jews. In the Encyclopedia of German Resistance to the Nazi Movement, you will read something like this. During World War II, the Gestapo arrested 800,000 Germans for resistance activities. Between 15,000 and 77,000 Germans were executed by the Nazis. Karl Jaspers, in his classic work The Question of German Guilt, wrote, "Concentration camps were a purely domestic affair until 1939, and even after that they were filled largely with Germans. In every month of 1944, the number of political arrests exceeded 4,000. So, in reality, there were not just 651 righteous, there were hundreds of thousands. It is just that when we analyze 70 million people, at the edges of the bell curve, there are in any case hundreds of thousands of people. Gather documentary evidence of these hundreds of thousands, and you will become a damn good debater. And what about objective truth? It will depend on who and what will be searching beside you."
We're awash in toxic memes right now. One of the most toxic, I think because it enables so many others, is the idea that truth doesn't matter. The truth is just relative, that there's no such thing as establishing the truth of anything. Your truth, my truth, we're all entitled to our own truths. That's pernicious,